Welcome Fabrication Nation to the shop. We are actually in my garage today. I wanted to just make a quick video about my new compressor I just picked up. I'm pretty excited about it. I got a sweet deal on it and it is exactly what I was looking for. Got pretty lucky, got it off of Craigslist. It needed a little bit of work, but I think we got it going. So let me show you what it is. So if the color doesn't give it away, what we have here is a Quincy 30-gallon compressor. This is I believe it's a 1 horsepower. They don't specify on the label here. On the horsepower they have SPL. Now I read up on this a little bit and I guess that stands for special. So I guess there's some mixed feelings on that. It's kind of a marketing scheme. They can say that the horsepower on this is kind of whatever they want because it's special. It's kind of their brand, I guess. So it doesn't really give you the horsepower, but I think this is somewhere between 1 and 1.5 horsepower motor. The cool thing about this is it has a low voltage and a high voltage, so you can wire this thing up for 115 or 220. I think that's on here somewhere. Oh, here we go. Voltage 115 or 220. So that's kind of cool. So speaking about the voltage and the wiring, I'll give you the story behind this and how I picked this up. I was looking on Craigslist. The guy was selling this as is for 400 bucks, and he didn't know if it would run or not. He had all the wiring pulled out of here. He had all the wiring mixed up. He had some kind of a switch over here, and I don't know if he did it or somebody did it before him, but the guy did not know how to wire this thing up. He hadn't used it in years. Supposedly they pulled it out of some kind of a shop, and he didn't know what to do with it. So essentially he just wanted to get rid of it. I called him up and I asked him, does it run? He said, well, he thinks it runs, but he's not sure. So I offered the guy 300 bucks. Initially he didn't take it, so I said, okay, well, I don't know if this thing runs or not, so I'm just going to cut my losses. At this point, I probably still would have forked over the $400 because I think worst case scenario, I would have had to replace this motor, and I think it was still a steal of a deal at $400. So I let him think on that for a minute. He ended up calling me back, I think in about an hour or 2 hours later, and said he would take the 300 bucks for it. So this was about an hour away from where I'm from. I hopped in the truck the next day. I drove out and I picked this thing up. The guy, I think, was in the banking industry, and he knew absolutely nothing about industrial equipment or wiring. So this guy knew that this was a good compressor, but he didn't know that Quincy is one of the top names in the industry when it comes to compressors. They're probably the leading compressor manufacturer for piston style compressors. And when I talk about piston style, it's any compressor that has this kind of a motor on it. And I'm sure that's debatable, but I think they are one of the top in their class as far as piston style goes. The other style would be a rotary screw compressor. I think they still make good screw compressors. I don't know if they're considered the top brand, but for piston styles, they are one of the top brands. So if I have to guess, I don't know exactly, but I think this is probably around a $1,500, possibly even like a $2,000 compressor, just because of the name and how long they last. These are industrial machines, and even though it's small, it is made to last a long, long time. So I think this is the deal of the year for me. I don't know that I will come across another deal this year that's going to be this good when you look at the perspective of the ratio of the sale to actually what the equipment's worth. Now, granted, I did take a risk. I knew right up front that there was a possibility I might have to replace this motor, But at this point, all seems to be turning out well for me, and I think I really came out ahead on this sale here. So I'll walk you through exactly what I had to do to get this thing up and going. So I'll pull out the wires now. So here are a couple pictures. I'll throw some pictures up of what I had to work with. You can see that the wires, when you get into it, all the wires didn't match up. They weren't ran correctly. Then also the switch was not wired properly, and it's just a really sloppy job. So I don't know if the seller had his hand on this, or if this is just kind of how he did it. He wasn't able to plug it in and turn it on, so he just called it quits after that. So to wire this thing up, all I did was I read right here, and you can see for low voltage you need to connect the blue, red, and orange, and then you connect the black, white, and yellow. So it says line 1 and line 2. On the end of the cord you have 2 prongs, so those are usually like a positive and a negative. So you could say line 1 would be positive, line 2 would be negative, and that's the connection that's being made. So I went ahead and did that, wired everything up, and the first time I popped the breaker. What I realized is that the switch was wired up wrong, and that was causing the breaker to pop. So I came back, I looked at my chart again, rewired it, then it worked. So then I was kind of relieved that the motor was working, and at that point I knew that I wouldn't have to replace the motor. But the fan was running backwards, and because the fan is running backwards, I know. So with the fan running backwards, it was still causing compression, and it was still filling the tank. I don't really know what downstream effects of the fan running backwards will have, but I know that that's not ideal. Maybe the motor's not designed for that and it'll wear out quicker. I'm not real sure. But right here it says to switch, right here, here we go. Rotation to reverse either voltage, interchange the black and the red lead. So that's what I did right in here. We've got a black lead right here, and I interchanged that with this red lead. I just basically swapped those over, and that changed over the rotation on this motor, and we were good to go. So after I had that all figured out, I went ahead and rewired a new switch, and I like this a lot better because it's industrial. It's an industrial switch. This is also a waterproof switch, so this is an added bonus. It didn't really call for all of that, but I just like the way it looks. I like the style of the switch. So that's why I went with this. I tapped a couple holes in the back side, right in here. Tapped some holes so that I could bolt this on, and then I wired it up with some new cord here, and this thing is just about 100% ready to go. The only last thing I have to do is wire up an outlet for the hose. Right now I've got this in here and this will work, but what this is really for is to drain your tank. So this is just temporary right now. What I want to do is put a block. So I have an example of a block. Let me grab it. Here is the block that I have, and this is an aluminum black oxide block. The problem is that these, and I didn't realize when I ordered it, these are 1/4" outlets, and I would prefer 3/8 outlets. This right here is a 3/8. So I would prefer these to be 3/8 just because you get more air pressure, more airflow. Also, I think 3/8 is a more standard size for air connections. So I'm going to take this back and then get a 3/8 port, 4-port 3/8 block here, and then I'm going to figure out where to mount this. I'm not sure yet. I'm debating either right here, right in front, just like that, or maybe here on the side, just like that, right there. I could even come off the side of this. I could tap in somewhere and come off the side right here. Even right here, I could maybe tap in right there and come off right off the front of that. I'm not sure yet. I'm still trying to figure that out. If you have any suggestions, go ahead and leave them in the comments on where I should mount that. As soon as I get that block in, I'll start working on that. Then the next thing is, this thing is pretty heavy. It's a 30-gallon tank. It's small, but it is heavy. So I do want to mount some wheels on it. Initially, I was thinking the 2 wheels, kind of like the wheelbarrow style, but I think I want to try something a little different. I think I want to go ahead and do like a full little chassis for the bottom of this thing, and almost like a wagon. So I can just kind of pull this thing wherever I need it. If I need to get out into the grass or go through some gravel, or just, you know, wheel it back into my shop or my garage or whatever, I could just pull it behind me just like a little wagon. So I'm thinking about doing that, designing some kind of little chassis to be able to pull it behind me. My only concern is how high I get this thing off of the floor. So I'll have to play around a little bit with that, because I don't want the center of gravity too high for it to fall over. I want a nice center of gravity so that when I pull it behind me, it doesn't have a chance of tipping to one side or the other. So more to be continued on that, but that's my plan for this thing. Once I get that block on there and get the wheels mounted, I think this thing will be done, and I have the sweetest compressor around in the shop. So like I said, I don't think I can beat this deal here. Pretty happy about it. So with all of that, let's go ahead and fire this thing up and see how she sounds, see how she runs. So before I fire this thing up, I want to give a shout out to my buddy John Hernandez. He is by trade a aircraft electrician, and I think he kind of doubted my electrical skills. So this first switch is going to be for my buddy John. Here we go. Yeah, I know, that's what you all expected to happen. Not so fast. Let's try that again. It's quiet. It's a lot quieter than what I expected. Now there is some vibrating noise, and I noticed a lot of that's coming from the cage back here, and if I hold this cage, some of that stops. So it's not really a big deal. I could probably maybe brace this cage up a little bit better and pull some of that noise out, but it's not that big of a deal. And that fan back there, that's a really big fan or pulley system for this size of compressor. Vibrating on the block off. We are getting some compression and some air pressure. We are at 35 right now. This should kick off just under 100, somewhere between 90 and 100 is when it should kick off. So when the pressure builds up right in here behind this pressure switch, it'll cut off just like that. So it cut off right at 90 psi, it looks like. So I'll release some pressure, and I don't know exactly where this is going to come back on, but if everything's wired properly, when this drops down to a certain pressure, that pressure switch will relieve the pressure and create contact, closing the circuit, which turns the motor back on. So let's see if that'll work. Let's see, back here in the back I think is our relief valve, if I can get to it. Here's another one. There we go. It kicks back on. Looks like right at about 75 is when it kicks back on. Alright, well that's my new Quincy compressor. See if you can beat that. Thanks for watching. Please share, like, and subscribe.